So Nikocado Avocado has finally revealed the truth behind everything in regards to, of course, his weight loss, how much was actually real and how much was fake over the last few years, his relationship with All In, and just in general, so much that a lot of people have been wondering about. But I think the most important thing about all of this is the fact that Nikocado Avocado is seemingly no more, and what we've been left with is, well, Nicholas. And all of this does come from Nicholas's brand new podcast in which he appears incredibly grounded, like a regular, normal human being. Not the guy from the last 2 years, or the guy who put on the Joker act recently, but just a regular dude. But despite the regularity, there were a lot of things said throughout this podcast which I think would be very interesting for you guys to hear, and when I heard them, I was kind of surprised and shocked at how much Nick was willing to admit to. So in today's video, what I want to do is pretty much just sit through this entire podcast, break it down, and give my genuine opinion on, well, absolutely everything. Because of course, a few months ago, as you may or may not know, I was, infamously made to look a little bit foolish after doing a massive video documenting everything to do with Nikocado Avocado. And yes, throughout this video, you are going to experience the occasional seasoning of, well, copium, but also, I think it's very clear that I have and still am very invested in the story of Nicholas Perry and Nikocado Avocado. And this podcast has really only increased that interest because something that I noticed after Nick uploaded his big reveal earlier this year, a lot of people kind of came to the conclusion that Nikocado Avocado and Nicholas Perry are two separate entities. But what this podcast really does reveal to me is nuance is very much needed in this saga because Nikocado and Nicholas aren't as far as apart as I think we originally perceived them to be. But I also did just want to go through the fact that a lot of people recently have been going over Nick's history and analysing the fact that, well, a lot of the criticism towards Nick over the years was not necessarily because of his weight, and it was due to a lot of valid reasons. And people are understandably quite mad that people have just forgotten about these valid reasons due to the fact that Nikocado simply lost weight. And yeah, we're going to get into all of that, but I think it is time to just get into the beginning of this podcast. And of course, just like in typical Nikocado Avocado fashion, the video starts with him crying.
I don't know why I'm crying, but this is great for the intro because I'm such the drama queen of YouTube, apparently.
Yeah.
Oh my god, hi.
Hi.
Hello, I'm buddy of the internet who wanted me to have a podcast and see me skinny. I decided to do it.
Yes, if there was something the world needed right now, it was definitely, yet again, another white dude with a microphone starting up, yet again, another podcast. And that is exactly why me and Obese to Beast have started Over the Pond, which is a podcast where we speak about a lot of different things, which if you're here right now watching this video, then, I think you would be definitely interested in some of the things that we've spoken about. For example, our next episode is all about Amberlynn Reid, diving into all of the drama and stuff surrounding that. So yeah, if you want to go and subscribe, please go and do so. Links are in the description. But moving away from that, yes, the actual beginning of this podcast immediately kind of brings you into this new reality that a lot of us haven't really seen. Because of course, as I mentioned earlier, when Nick first lost weight, he was presenting himself in this incredibly villainous, spooky way. Look at me, I'm the Joker, I'm definitely not an insane individual. But in this podcast, it's not that whatsoever, and it's very clear that Nick almost has multiple characters. He has this, which is Nikocado Avocado, and then he has the Joker Nikocado Avocado, and then, as I said, he has Nicholas Perry, which I don't think is going to be the most enticing version of Nick. I don't think that this guy is necessarily going to get the views that he was getting previously, but honestly, I don't think that necessarily matters here, because it's very clear that Nick is in a much more mentally sane place right now. And look, I don't care what anyone says about the whole master plan thing. There is no way you can do what Nick did over the years and not slightly be insane. And look, if it really was this big master plan set out over a 10-year period like it was the MCU, we've got a different movie here, we've got some TV shows coming out here, that's great, but I would also love to know the planning behind the little bit of where Nick's asshole, his actual rectum, was just sprawled out all over my social media timeline. I would really like to know what was in the thought process behind that plan there. Was that going to get a Disney Plus series? Because, again, I don't think that's really copium. I will get into the coping later on, but I don't think it's copium to suggest that everything isn't exactly a master plan. But in moving into the next section of the podcast, Nick basically goes on to confirm that this is what he wants to do right now. He doesn't really want to be the old character that he was playing in all of his videos, and this is just really the new him, and honestly, that's pretty interesting to hear given where Nick's content has been in the last decade.
And we're just gonna chill and just talk, really. And I think people are excited to see me in a different space, not really shoving the food down my throat.
Yeah.
And I've always wanted to do podcasts. People have been asking me for it forever. And I did a little bit. I did like a trial. It was at the worst timing.
It's weird because I know you like this all the time.
We talk all the time.
Nick I know.
All the time.
Yeah.
Now, whilst I did go on a bit of a rant before playing that clip of stating that this wasn't all a big master plan, admittedly, I have actually heard from people in the past and friends that I have now that they have spoken to people that know Nick behind closed doors, and they've basically stated that who Nick is in this clip right here is what he is like behind the scenes. Even when he was, going through all of the ridiculous things that he was going through over the years, I have heard that Nikocado isn't like a big supervillain behind the scenes, and honestly, that doesn't exactly shock me, and I don't believe in my YouTube video when I covered everything, I actually said that Nikocado was definitely like who he is on camera. In fact, a large section of that video was basically me saying I'm gonna kind of avoid big chapters of Nick's lore because it was blatantly him just doing things for attention, trolling, and baiting in the name of getting views and money. For example, a big subgenre of content on Nikocado's channel is his relationship with All-In, where they pretty much just rage bait to a maximum extent. They fight each other, they throw food at each other, they break up, they cheat, all of that good stuff. And I remember in my video basically saying that, this is very obviously a sub-genre of content for Nick. This is something he knows will get views, and this is where I'm going to come in with a little bit of copium, because again, I don't necessarily think this was all a master plan. I think that there may have been struggles over the years. I think Nick clearly acknowledged that certain things get views on his channel, and he definitely played into those things, and eventually it did become a complete and utter theatrical performance. And something you're going to note about this next section of the podcast is basically his co-host likes to be like, how do people not know about this? They basically call the audience dumb for these things. And yes, I definitely think that there were people out there that genuinely did believe that everything we've seen from Nick in the last 10 years was absolutely 100% real. And honestly, even in the research of my big video, I remember sitting there thinking, wow, am I going to get hate for saying that most of this is fake? Because yeah, there definitely was a big audience that believed everything, but at the same time, that doesn't necessarily mean, again, that this was all a master plan. Was it a master plan to get outright exposed by Stephanie Sue and multiple individuals and become hated by the entire internet for quite a long time? Because this is something also which I think is kind of interesting, that Nick lost weight and immediately everyone just kind of came to this belief that Nikocado was hated because he was a heavier weight, which the reality is that's not true whatsoever. Nikocado was hated for a lot of valid reasons. There are videos now actually going back to the past and looking at those reasons. Again, it's gonna sound like I'm coping, but that was what my whole big video was mainly about. We looked at the very origins of Nick, and we did a bit of a historical analysis on some of the fake things, but also on some of the very genuine and real things. His beef with Trisha Paytas, his beef with Stephanie Sue, his beef with Zachary Choi, and I don't think any of that is necessarily redundant because he lost weight. And something that I've noticed quite interestingly is people aren't willing to listen to that. Like, I've seen videos where people have just, pointed that out. They've said, well done on losing the weight. And yes, there clearly was a plan in the fact of he pre-recorded videos for 2 years and then secretly lost weight behind the scenes. I'm not going to take that away from the bloke. That is genuine genius. Because Nick was also, yes, definitely known for his weight, but I don't think he was mainly hated for that. So it's kind of like a whole thing that requires nuance. Yet sadly on YouTube, people really can't have much nuance, is what I've discovered with the Mr. Beast situation recently. I've spoken about it yet again on my podcast, but I've basically spoke about the fact that there is a lot of misinformation out there about Mr. Beast. Some things that were accused against him outright not being true, yet at the same time there are a lot of real valid things that you can criticize him for, such as, in my opinion, the crypto stuff currently surrounding Mr. Beast. I think that is a very, very valid thing to criticize, but also his friendship with people like Logan Paul. Why is Mr. Beast so insistent on being friends and business partners with a guy who has ruined the lives of a lot of individuals out there via cryptocurrency? But weirdly enough, the internet can't handle when somebody says, yes, some things are fake and some things are true. It's I think because people don't want to be almost like a centrist in some things, but when you're covering very serious things, you do need to sometimes take a middle ground. Yes, still make an opinion, but that doesn't mean you have to say this bad guy means all of the bad things are true. Even with a more serious topic like James Charles, I remember covering it and saying there are very serious allegations against this guy that definitely seem to be true, yet at the same time there are also a lot of fake allegations, and I remember people getting mad at me and I was like, why? I'm just stating the facts here. And going back to Nikocado Avocado, I think the same can be said with him. There are a lot of real reasons to criticize the guy, yet because he lost weight in this big epic, grand plan, that seems to have made all of that redundant. Now, I'm not saying you need to hang on to Stephanie Sue's video and take that as absolute gospel for the rest of your life and never forgive Nikocado Avocado whatsoever, but ultimately, in regards to things like my video, I think I was pretty valid in most of the things that I said in that video. Yes, some of the things may not have aged too well, but overall, I think people are allowed to still criticize the guy regardless of weight loss, because at the end of the day, I am also somebody that went through weight loss, and I can pretty much say I'm basically the exact same human being that I was 3 years ago. Well, not the exact, I've grown and changed a bit, but I still have a very similar personality to who I was 3 years ago. Yes, people grow and they change, but ultimately, losing weight doesn't mean you're a different human being now. All of the things that you've done and you do now are all still the same person from years ago. Growing and changing is a thing, and I'm sure Nikocado Avocado has definitely gone through that, but let's not pretend that weight loss is this magical remedy to getting away with absolutely everything. And I think it actually says a lot, again, I'm gonna sound like the Joker, but about society, that when somebody becomes skinny, we're immediately like, oh, this bloke is actually absolutely great. It's like, wait, what? What changes like a day ago when you thought he was 300 pounds and now he's 180 pounds? What has changed realistically in terms of the grand scheme of history? The only grand plan was the weight loss. And yeah, maybe I'm a little bit bitter. I'm not bitter. I am right. I'm always right, okay? But it's just something that I needed to get off my chest, all right? My chest, which used to weigh 100 pounds heavier, because I also have lost weight. But again, in terms of the big grand plan, what's interesting is some of the things in this podcast also do show us that, again, not all of it was a grand plan, because there's a segment where they speak about Nick's eating habits before he really got massive on social media, and it does kind of indicate that regardless of how and what Nick became in 2024, he was always going to have a bit of weight gain. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean he was going to become 300 pounds. Again, nuance is needed, but it definitely shows that the grand plan wasn't as grand as originally perceived. Because a lot of people seem to believe the grand plan was Nick deliberately gained weight to gain social media attention and then lost weight to then gain even more attention. And this next clip kind of contradicts that.
My name's Nicholas. Most people call me Nick. And then Nikocado Avocado came from when I was a fruitarian back in the day. I was only eating fruit, and I was eating a lot of avocados, and avocados is my favorite fruit. And I was eating so many, like literally 15 to 20 a day, which is like, yeah, that's a problem. I mean, it wasn't a problem. I was enjoying myself. And actually, Orlin gave me the name.
Really?
He was sitting next to me, watching me eat all these avocados. He's like, you're like the Nikocado Avocado.
Say that again?
I mean, there's something quite beautiful about the fact that Orlin pretty much absolutely dooms the timeline. If there was one thing that I learned from my big ass video, and I'm sorry to keep on referencing it, but if there was one thing I learned from that video, is that Nick basically completely started doing YouTube properly in like 2016, and that's when he got really popular, and that's where the name Nikocado Avocado truly started to get some grandeur. So I definitely think All In pretty much cursed the timeline, and is it a coincidence that 2016 onwards, everything in terms of the world has just been going to absolute since? It can't be a coincidence. All In, you are responsible for everything. But yeah, going back to the grand plan thing yet again, I definitely think that this shows that not everything was as much as a grand plan, because 15 to 20 avocados a day is around 4,800 calories from avocados, just from avocados alone. That's not including all of the other food that he would have ate every single day. So obviously he was eating probably between 5,000 and 6,000 calories a day. And when you are at the weight that he was at, I don't know, around 160, 180 pounds, he was probably burning around 2,000 calories from, or 1,800 calories from just sitting down. So that would mean Nick would be in like a 4,000, 3,000 plus calorie surplus every single day, meaning he would be gaining a lot of weight. And that means to me that, yeah, this wasn't all a plan. He definitely did have some, unresolved eating habits that I think definitely were a problem at the time. And I think Nick saw that after a little bit of weight gain, he knew that he could play into that style of content. Because yeah, again, in my video, I covered the fact that years ago, Nick was complaining about weight gain and those videos got fairly decent views. And I think Nick saw that and decided, you know what? I'm going to play into this. I'm going to gain weight even more because it gets views. So whilst it was a little bit of a plan, I don't think it started off as this meticulously, insanely well-produced storyline like it's been presented to be in 2024. But then moving away from that, another big debated thing about Nick over the years is his in general happiness. Because obviously, in all of his videos between 2016 and 2023, Nick pretty much just seemed absolutely depressed. His marriage was in the mud. He was constantly fighting with All In. He was constantly in drama, and it really did seem like he was in a very depressed state. But funnily enough, Nick goes on to actually confirm that for the most part, he was happy, and yeah, his bank account was full.
Well, who knows if people are ever happy?
Yeah.
People thought I was fat and miserable. I mean, I was miserable.
Yeah.
Definitely there were times everything was extra hard.
Right.
But I was like, my bank account's good. My marriage is pretty good.
And you were 2 steps ahead, so you knew.
Things were good.
Yeah.
Now, I think what this does just show to us is, again, the word nuance can be applied here. Because realistically, Nick knew what he was doing for a big chunk of his channel. And it all started from accidentally stumbling upon success via methods that weren't necessarily good for his health and realizing he could exploit that in the future. So yes, there was somewhat of a plan in regards to the style of content that he was going to go with, but I don't necessarily think that there was this big meticulous plan of where he plans over the years to gain hundreds of pounds and then lose hundreds of pounds. I think it was more he was a bit of a victim of his own circumstances, realized that certain chaotic things do well in the YouTube algorithm, and he just absolutely played off that, and it led to, as he said, a very full bank account. But again, that brings up another issue which I don't think is redundant because Nick lost weight, and that is exploiting your own health and jeopardizing your health in the pursuit of views and monetization. Because a big critique Nick has faced over the years is the fact that he would, yes, exploit his health. He would put on a large amount of weight, even if he was doing it deliberately, all in the name of making money. And this was very, very worrying. And as you're going to discover in this podcast, Nick actually does explain that there are long-lasting effects of this weight gain. And this is why I don't think a lot of the criticism is redundant, regardless of if he lost weight or didn't lose weight, because there are lifelong effects to gaining a large amount of weight. No TikToker is going to convince me otherwise that being 400 pounds when you're like 5'10" is a good thing. And the thing is I think people at that weight, at that height, will acknowledge that yes, they're the ones that know it more than anyone. This is not a healthy thing regardless of what anyone says. And it's weird that we now live in this culture where you get a lot of skinny people trying to, I guess, be that one friend who's a bit too woke, of where they're like, oh no guys, it's absolutely fine, when you'll have people at a very heavy weight being like, no, this isn't fine. There are reasons they got to that weight, and that is completely understandable. But the health aspect is not fine. As somebody that was, at one point, this might shock you, I was 315 pounds in weight, and I still, despite losing a lot of that weight, deal with long-lasting health effects, which sadly may affect me for the rest of my life. So I can sit here and tell you, this is not a good thing. Exploiting your health in the name of views is not good, and we should continue to criticize that style of content, and I will criticize Nikocado to this day for popularizing that genre of content and almost normalizing it, because sadly, there are plenty of content creators out there to this day that know that weight gain related content is something that gets views, and they are going to put their health at risk consistently just to get money. No grandmaster plan really reduces that or makes that redundant. And again, if you used to think that and now you no longer think that because Nick lost weight, what's really changed there? Are you just perceiving him to now be a good person because he's skinny, but you didn't think he was a good person when he was a larger weight? Because to me personally, that's actually a pretty messed up thing to do. But then that does lead us into the section between the 13th minute and the 21st minute, where Nick and his co-host pretty much discuss everything to do with his weight loss and how they fooled the internet.
And people too, along with that, she gets the funniest comments on her podcast, but someone said as well, oh, this isn't even Nikocado. He's like edited into this.
And I'm like, so you think we're all having a conversation.
The same conversation.
That's not there. We're staring at somebody who's not there.
Having a conversation.
We're envisioning your replies.
Yes.
Why are people so dumb?
And I was talking to a really good friend of mine back from school, and she was like, how did you like pull off what you did where people thought you were like mentally crazy and just like, I thought I would be like, it's just water weight, which I thought people knew I was joking, but people like that you are delusional. You need to count calories. You need more protein. You have a low IQ. I'm like,
you have a low IQ or they have.
Well, now it's very clearly they
peasants.
do. But they're like, how did you get away with it? And I'm like, here's a prime example. It's like people just over their head. And I'm not even trying to be mean, but it's just like,
I know.
It goes over their heads.
I know. I thought it was very obvious that it was an act, but maybe not.
Well, you knew me too. But
well, yeah,
still.
and I have like common sense.
Yeah, common sense.
I'm not being mean either.
I mean,
like,
okay.
I'm being genuine.
Again, I think the problem here comes down to what I've been speaking about previously throughout all of this video. I think a lot of the world did know what Nick was doing was absolutely fake, but yes, there was a lot of valid criticism out there about Nikocado. One of the most viewed videos about Nikocado is Penguin Zero Critical, speaking about how Nick is jeopardizing his health in the name of views. And in that video, Charlie pretty much admits that yes, all of this is fake, but at the same time, Nick is still putting himself in an incredibly vulnerable position, and no amount of faking changes that. At the end of the day, Nick still gained a large amount of weight, and as I said earlier, you're going to discover that there are long-lasting effects of that. So no, I don't necessarily think the entire world is dumb. Yes, some are for believing everything, but at the end of the day, I think there is still valid criticism of Nikocado, and I think a lot of the criticism made over the years still absolutely stands. But then after this, they move into speaking about the hate that Nick actually received for a lot of the content that he posted.
I got obviously a lot of hate over the years.
Yeah.
Oh, you shouldn't be doing this. Don't make fun of this. Oh, poor Orlin, you threw a noodle at him. Okay, that's what I want to bring up. People would be like, oh, he's mimicking DV.
Oh.
Or it's triggering. I'm like, okay, two grown men.
Yeah.
Grown 30-year-old men.
Yep.
Men.
Yep.
And are they grabbing hammers and knives? No.
Cake.
Frosted blueberry pumpkin cake with sprinkles. With literally Disney ice princess drawn all over it. Grabbing a cake.
A soft
cake. And he didn't hit it like lunge back, like
no.
whip it up
No.
to get like, he was just like, boop.
Which people do that on their wedding day. So is that DV? People do that on the wedding day. They're like, they shove cake in their face. Like,
the difference is he was calling me ugly, but some brides probably get called ugly too. On their
That's sad. That's horrible.
Now, yeah, the big criticism that they're acknowledging here is over the years, a lot of people out there have spoken about Nikocado and his partner Allin's relationship, where a lot of people have basically said that the actions that Nick put towards Allin were pretty much abusive. People suggested that Nick was very, very horrible to Allin, they were fighting constantly, and people genuinely did believe that. And obviously, that is something which I completely disagree with. And again, it comes into a whole nuanced thing. Some things can be ridiculous, some things can be real valid criticisms. And unfortunately, yes, there were people out there, quite a few people out there, that genuinely believed that all of Nick and Allin's relationship issues were absolutely real. Now, I do think that over the years, there may or may not have been some valid, issues that they had between each other, and maybe they exploited some of that over the internet in the early years. I guess we'll really never know the truth on that. Honestly, I'm not really that bothered. In my long video about this, I actually did say that I'm not really going to cover every single scenario that they had, and I just kind of skimmed over it because I clearly acknowledged that a lot of it was fake, and honestly, a lot of my audience really also clearly acknowledged that because to an average adult, I think it's very clear that what's going on here is just a bit of a pantomime, that this is something that you would show a kid, and yeah, they probably find it really funny, to be honest with you. So no, I don't think that Nikocado should be criticized for that, and honestly, I feel like it was probably one of the most harmless things that he actually ever did on his channel. But with that, let's move on.
But anyways, back to what I was trying to say. I'm like, you really think if this was Nick's in trouble, Orlin's in trouble, ooh, they're not getting along, this is so violent, a cake, or salad. He took romaine hearts, ripped it up, shredded, and said, "You're too fat. You're too fat.
That is
You're so fat." I think it's people that might get called fat, and then maybe, or they are fat and they don't like that they're fat.
Something.
They're just getting like, oh, I feel like it was my ex used to call me fat. Now I'm all upset.
Yeah.
Maybe okay, but people thought like we were really going at it, or we had a bad marriage, or like they need to get away. Someone needs to call the police. And I would act out like I'm calling the police.
The police.
The police. Calling the police.
And again, this is just more of what we spoke about previously. People on the internet are absolutely silly. And at the same time, there is a part of me that looks at this and thinks, well, you publicized your relationship massively on the internet, and you know that people on the internet are absolutely stupid. So I don't really completely understand the frustration that Nick has here, because at the end of the day, he never really said everything that he does is a pantomime, it's fake, until recently. So obviously you are going to have a few dummies out there that see the things that he's posting and absolutely do believe it. Again, that doesn't necessarily mean they're justified in their actions, but at the same time, I don't really understand getting frustrated at them for actually believing everything that you were posting on your channel, because they just simply trusted you. And as an internet content creator, every content creator knows that audiences can be a little bit naive at times. And obviously, I'm not speaking about you guys. You guys are the real smart ones around here. You guys are all geniuses who deserve a benefit. I can't even speak English. I'm stupid too. We're all stupid. I was going to say you deserve a free master's degree. Free education to all, am I right? Like the video, comment down below. Thank you very much. But yeah, pretty much, I want to move on from this section of him speaking about his relationship of Allin, this is obviously all absolutely ridiculous. And Nick and Allin, I'm sure they've got a lovely, wonderful relationship. And I don't have any grievances with that relationship whatsoever, regardless of if something ever did happen in it or didn't happen in it. It's not really any of my business. And in my video, when I covered some of the parts of their relationship, it was more because, well, I was doing a historical analysis on everything to do with Nikocado Avocado, and Nick made Allin a big part of his content. Now, they do go on to speak more about the hate and criticism that Nick received over the years, and yeah, in particular to do with his relationship with Allin. But something that I noticed during all of this is that they don't really acknowledge any of the real valid criticism made towards Nick. Instead, they like to be like, oh, it was all theatrics, and oh, we were just playing characters, and you guys should have really acknowledged that. But again, I don't really think that's fair in terms of a lot of the reasons why Nick received a large amount of criticism. Again, the Stephanie Sue and Zach Choi stuff, that can't be avoided by saying, oh, Nick was playing a character. And the same goes for a lot of other of the criticism and expose made against Nick over the years.
And be like, oh, they were acting the whole time. Also, that's like half the movies. I always say, like, do you just walk out of the movie theater because you're so upset someone acted out? Even Disney, they're violent. They're like throwing swords.
That
and
is so true.
Swords and
Yeah, you're there for their entertainment too. Which I don't think people
storm out of the theater. Like, I saw a violent act. I'm triggered.
I feel
I'm on a refund. They're acting out roles that I don't want to see, or is not necessarily the best, but they're not upset by it. But so why is it okay for actors on the movie screens, but it's not okay for social media on the iPhone screens?
I think that's the problem. Is I think people
they think it has to be real because it's on the iPhone.
Yes, and they like whatever people see online. It's like it's real, and I think that's where people love YouTube. Is like it feels like real people that they're watching, like reality shows. That's why reality shows are so popular, because you feel like
they think
person.
It's real too.
But like with an actress or an actor, they're acting. It's like
especially if they have like a bonnet or
yeah,
like some type of outfit.
Yeah, something that like makes them look different. Well, you put on a whole good act. You changed your whole body.
I know.
I don't know. Personally, I feel like people have a hard time finding the line between is this real and is it fake? And
well, good, it worked. But
like people also forget that this is entertainment. This is legit entertainment.
What I did wasn't that special, if you think about it. I mean, yeah, and for the zoomed in, narrowed in YouTube community, like, wow, no one's really done this, which I don't think anyone has.
No.
2 years.
People have trolled, but they haven't, like,
to that extent,
became a whole character themselves.
And the weight gain, too.
Oh yeah.
And
like,
lose
you
the
were
weight.
very committed to the character.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people are still, like, hoping to lose. I mean, losing weight is hard.
Oh, yeah.
Very,
Yeah.
very hard.
Yeah.
So, but still, even if you don't do that part, I think what I did, if you take a zoom out of the YouTube space,
Yeah.
and it's just someone, you meet at the coffee shop, be like, this guy got fat, he like pretended to be something he wasn't, did all these crazy acts, and he lost the weight and said, haha, I was just acting. They'd be like, okay, it's not that big of a deal. It's really not. But when you're zoomed in and you're like sucked into it, and you've been watching all the videos and all the people talk about me over the years.
Now, with all of the things said there, I want to focus on the it's not that big of a deal thing. Yes, he's actually kind of right in what he said. Obviously, it's not that big of a deal, but I think it very much does paint over everything to why Nick has received so much attention over the years. Again, it's not just the fact that he lost weight that people are so obsessed with him. People are obsessed with him for all of the valid reasons that we've gone over today, and there are plenty of other reasons out there. And I don't really understand the need to skim over those things, because at the end of the day, if you want to like Nikocado Avocado, you're more than entitled to. But let's not just pretend that history isn't what it was. Let's not rewrite history. History is what it was, and I don't think losing weight changes that. And I think that's why I've been a little bit frustrated with this story over the last few months. Just sitting back and watching all the videos about it and seeing Nick's new podcast, it does just kind of confuse me. I don't understand why weight loss makes absolutely everything redundant for some people out there. Obviously, Nikocado Avocado was a character for a large portion of his YouTube career, but at the same time, he also was involved in some real human situations, and we cannot avoid that. But yeah, let's just put that to a side for now and leave that for a bit later. But instead, let's move on to the next section of when Nick actually goes on to confirm the heaviest he ever got to. And it really was quite a lot, and it only really contributes to why so many people out there were worried.
Oh my god.
Ginormous pounds. That's not edited.
That's me. Me when I'm pregnant.
When you're pregnant. That's unedited.
Oh
I didn't
my
even stretch
gosh.
me out. That was around the time I quit. I must have hit 400 or something.
That's crazy.
402, I don't know.
I don't even recognize you. It's weird.
Now, some people out there may say, well, why does this really matter? Well, to me personally, based on everything that we've heard, Nikocado Avocado absolutely risked his own life and health for content. I mean, in certain sections of this podcast, they're literally making jokes about the fact that Nikocado was basically like lucky to not have a heart attack. That's the opinion I got when I heard them being like, oh yeah, I didn't actually have a heart attack. And it's like, what? You were actually like in it like a risky spot of having a heart attack?
We had like reunions as I got fatter and fatter. Like 2 years goes by, Nick's here, Carly's here.
Yeah.
2 years goes by, Nick's surprisingly still here, hasn't died.
Surprise.
Art hasn't stopped.
Yeah.
Is that not concerning? Is that not worrying? Is that not concerning that the genre that he has popularized is still a thing on YouTube? And again, I think that is all very valid criticism that isn't just defended by, oh, I lost weight and oh, it was all a big master plan character act. I'm not personally offended by Nick's weight of what it is now or what it was before, but I think what he did was very worrying, and it is worrying that this behavior is kind of being normalized on YouTube to this day, ruining your health for the sake of views and money. And the worst part is I can see why people do it. I can see that people would clearly see that Nick was getting millions upon millions of views. He's very rich, as he acknowledges in this podcast, and I could understand why a lot of people would think to themselves, oh, I'm going to just repeat what he did. I'm going to gain 300 pounds and I'm going to lose all that weight and become an internet sensation overnight. And it's like, no, you're not. Because Nikocado is a very unique individual. Not every single person is going to be, and as much as you may not agree with me, as entertaining as Nikocado Avocado. Nikocado sacrificed all forms of shame and just basically became a walking entertainment piece on the internet. He was not afraid to do anything if it meant he could get more views and more money. But not everybody can do that, and not everybody can lose their weight. And even if they could, they would also be dealing with long-lasting health effects for the rest of their life, no matter if they actually did lose weight or not. And this does move us into the next section of when Nick does actually speak about a certain long-lasting effect that's started to happen for him in regards to his weight loss.
I know I just posted something on my TikTok where I was upset because people were just like, oh, he's still fat, or he looks worse and this and that. And that kind of got to me. Like, I was like, I think what made me pause and kind of just think about it was the fact that just showing you that photo, that's what I still think I am. It's weird.
Yeah,
like,
isn't that like body dysmorphia? Like when you look.
But I don't have body dysmorphia. I've never had body dysmorphia.
You could now.
And I don't even know how did I develop it from losing weight? Is that a thing?
Well, because I think you can even have it in like stages, because when I was pregnant, I was like, oh, I'm not even that big, because you see yourself slowly get there. So it's like your brain doesn't see that you're all of a sudden so much bigger.
Yeah.
And so like when that happened to me and I was pregnant, I was like, oh, I'm not even that big. And then now that I'm looking back at when I was pregnant, I'm like, wait, I was pretty huge.
Yeah.
But because it's slowly happening and you're slowly losing weight, I feel like it doesn't. I can't.
That's a very good way of putting it.
You almost don't notice it.
You don't notice that you're getting big, and then you're like, wow, I'm fat. And then you don't notice yourself losing weight, and you're like, but I'm still fat.
Yeah.
Like you haven't caught up.
Yeah. It's like your brain is still like a year behind.
Gosh. Yeah. I like look in the camera and I'm like, oh my God, I'm almost gone. Like it's almost like we're done losing weight. There's no more weight to lose, barely.
Yeah.
But in my head, I sometimes forget. It's just weird. And then there'll be another day where I look at those photos. I'm like, that's not me. That's not me. Like, that's a different person.
Yeah. See,
so there's something going on.
Now, I'm not saying this to shame Nick in any way, but sadly, this is a very common side effect of losing weight that a lot of people out there do experience. As you can see here, this is something that is typically called phantom fat syndrome, and it is a very real thing that a large amount of people sadly deal with after they lose weight. And this again plays into the whole thing of, it was a big master plan. It's like, no, I don't think it was a big grand master plan to deal with very significant mental health issues that can last a very, very long time. Some individuals out there, based on my research and just talking to people that experience these things, have had these things for their entire life, and they don't really see these things ending anytime soon. And don't get me wrong, I hope that Nick doesn't deal with this for a very long time, and I hope this is just a short-term micro effect of weight loss, and I hope he gets over it very quickly. But we can't just say that and ignore the fact that there are significant issues with gaining a lot of weight in the sake of making content and then losing that in the sake of making content, because that leads to a lot of bad things, as we have seen right here. So no, I don't think this is all exactly a big, positive, amazing story. And despite what Nick was saying about his happiness before he lost weight, it's very clear that his weight was sadly affecting him in his private life. And that doesn't mean he was sad and depressed, but it means that it was definitely impacting him. And if you're someone that's thinking about gaining a load of weight in the sake of making YouTube content and getting all that moolah, just listen to what Nick has to say here.
I haven't been to a movie theater in America. Well, part of the reason was my weight, and I also...
Could you fit in the theater seats?
You know, now that you say that, probably not, because I couldn't fit in the airplane seats.
Oh
I was forced to fly first class. Not because I was like, oh, I'm so much better.
Choice.
No, even with a seatbelt extender, it had nothing to do with the seat, like the belly. It was like the width. I couldn't fit down in between the arms.
Oh my.
And some arms some arms don't go up on planes.
Yeah, that's true.
They just don't go up. Some are just
Especially if you're
stuck.
at the end.
Now, obviously, we can naturally have a conversation about the fact that, yes, this is deeply unfair. This is unfair that airport seats very much are just built to cater to skinny people out there, and they don't cater to people of all shapes and sizes. That is a very, very valid criticism that we should acknowledge, but we should also acknowledge the fact that this is sadly a side effect of what happens when you gain this amount of weight in the name of YouTube views. It doesn't necessarily make it right, it absolutely doesn't, but sadly these are things that you do need to talk about, because at the end of the day, it may not have affected Nick mentally, but it definitely could affect you mentally. Everybody out there is different, and I am worried that this whole thing is now going to become a normalized popular thing of where people see Nick's story and do it themselves because they think they can become a millionaire from it. When the reality is Nick is a very unique and special individual. Now, the rest of the podcast is Nick mainly just chatting with his friend, and honestly, the podcast is a good listen. I genuinely recommend it, especially if you want to hear more from Nikocado Avocado, because the general vibe is pretty pleasant and enjoyable, and it's a good laugh that they're having between each other. And yeah, it does kind of give the vibe that the previous era of Nikocado Avocado is genuinely over. And this brings me into something that I mentioned at the beginning of this video. I am curious at how this will go for Nikocado, because ultimately the main thing Nick has been known for over the years has been drama. If you think Nikocado Avocado, you think him throwing spaghetti and food at his partner, him getting into beef with people like Stephanie Sue, Zach Choi, and plenty of other individuals out there. Nikocado is known as the guy that screams and cries and embarrasses himself on camera and does ridiculous things in the name of getting attention. And if he suddenly stops doing that like he has, well, how will that go for him? Well, sadly, clearly not exactly too well. As you can see from his recent uploads here, the views are not as good in comparison to when he is being outrageous on camera. And some people may say to me, oh, well, you cover drama and you get views for that, and if you stop doing that, then you wouldn't get as many views. And yeah, I completely agree with you. When you're known for a certain niche on the internet and you get an audience for that niche, if you suddenly stop catering to that niche, you switch up on everything, your views are going to go down, as you can see here. If I randomly started making video essays about my favorite Pokemon games, yes, that would be really fun, and I kind of actually want to do it on a second channel, but if I did that on the main channel, the views would be absolutely terrible in comparison to the views that I get on average per my current videos, because I play into a certain niche that I'm known for. So yeah, I am actually really interested to see what the future holds for Nikocado Avocado, given that in this podcast he pretty much does just say that this is the new era of Nick, the era of where he isn't shoving food into his mouth and being outrageous on camera. And that is very fascinating and brings me to the conclusion, which honestly is just going to be a question of, well, was this really all a big master plan? I personally don't think so, but I'm sure a lot of you out there definitely do think so, and I would love to see what you guys think down below, so please let me know in the comments section. But with things like Stephanie Sue exposing him and Zachary Choi exposing him and people being outright concerned for very valid reasons about Nick's health, I just refuse to believe this was all a meticulously planned plan, because as we've seen in this podcast, there have been long-lasting effects, and not everything was planned, because as we've discovered, Nick was eating around 5,000 calories a day at one point, and I think he just discovered that weight gain is something that does really well on YouTube, so he planned into it. So again, the word of the day that I'm going to end this video with is nuance. not everything is real, not everything is fake, not everything is a master plan. The master plan, in my opinion, was hiding the fact that he lost weight for so long. That absolutely did bamboozle a lot of people out there, and it did bamboozle me. But at the end of the day, regardless of everything, Nikocado Avocado is pretty much the Joker of YouTube, and I don't know if that's going to change anytime soon. But yes, that is the ending of the video. Thank you so much for coming along, and again, I would love to know your opinions down below. I am going to speak about this on my podcast next week with Obese to Beast, so please go to Over the Pond podcast, subscribe, watch the latest episodes, because we speak about some pretty similar and interesting stuff. In fact, in the latest episode, we do speak about Nick and his fake content, so please go check that out. It will be up next. I really want to upload more podcasts on that, and I want to build the audience over there, so I would really appreciate it if you came over there and joined in and be part of the first 10,000 subscribers over there. Thank you so much, everybody. Please like this video, please comment your thoughts, and also follow me on Instagram at iNabber. That is the ending of the video. Is this going to be controversial? Maybe. I don't know. Honestly, I don't really care, because at the end of the day, I'm obviously right about everything. Bye-bye, everybody. Have a lovely weekend. And I think this is coming out after Thanksgiving, but regardless, I hope you had an amazing Thanksgiving. And also, I hope you have a really wonderful festive period. Merry Christmas, I guess, because I think it's now December. Bye-bye. Peace out. Bye.